A creature the size of a hillside sits down in a cave. Somebody hands him a bowl of wine. He drinks it. He asks for more. He drinks that. He asks again. He drinks a third. And then he falls over. 3 bowls. That is the whole ambush. The most famous monster in Greek literature is beaten by 3 drinks, and everybody accepts this, because it happens fast and there is a burning stake immediately afterwards and nobody stops to do the arithmetic. But do the arithmetic. 3 drinks would not put down a large man. This is not a large man, so either the story is careless, or there is something in that bowl the story expects you to already understand. There is. Homer tells you exactly what it is, in detail, before the cave, before the monster, before any of it. He just tells you so early that by the time it matters you have forgotten. Start with the trap, because the trap explains the plan. Odysseus and 12 of his men are inside a cave and there is a stone across the mouth of it. Homer is specific about that stone. It is not a boulder they could shift, it is a mass that 20 carts could not move. The Cyclops rolls it into place with one hand, the way you would shut a door, so the men are sealed in. And that produces the strangest constraint in the whole poem. They cannot kill him. They have swords, he is asleep, and at one point Odysseus stands over him with a blade and thinks about it seriously. And then thinks it through. If they kill him, the stone stays where it is. They would be locked in a stone room with a corpse the size of a barn, and they would die there, so the plan cannot be to kill him. The plan has to be to make him harmless and keep him alive, and it has to happen inside a cave with no weapons that work and no room to run. Which leaves exactly one option. He has to be unconscious, and he has to do it to himself. Which brings us to what was in the bowl. Before any of this, on an earlier island, Odysseus had spared a man called Maron, a priest of Apollo. Maron paid him back in gifts, and one of them was wine. 12 jars of it, sealed, kept back from the household, the good stuff, the stuff you do not open. And here Homer does something he almost never does. He gives you a number. When they drank that wine, he says, they poured 1 measure of it into 20 measures of water. 20, and even then the smell coming off the mixing bowl was so sweet that holding back from it was painful. Now, you have to know what that number is being compared to. Greeks did not drink wine neat, ever. Wine came to the table in a crater, a wide mixing bowl, and it was cut with water before anybody touched it, normally something in the region of 1 part wine to 3 or 4 parts water. That was not squeamishness. Water was not reliably safe and wine made it safer, so the two arrived together as a matter of routine, and the mixture was weak enough that a Greek symposium could run for hours. So when Homer says Maron's wine took 1 part to 20, he is not writing a recipe. He is telling you this wine is 4 or 5 times outside the normal range. It is being marked as extraordinary, the way you might say a chili is so hot you use a drop. And I should be straight with you about that number, because it is the kind of detail that gets repeated as though it were laboratory data. We do not know what ancient wine actually measured, and 1 part in 20 of anything realistic would come out close to water. The ratio is doing literary work. It is a way of saying asterisk this is not ordinary wine asterisk, and it is probably an exaggeration. What we can take from it is the direction, not the decimal. Now watch what the Cyclops does with it. Odysseus fills the bowl and hands it over. And Polyphemus drinks it down neat, no crater, no water, nothing. He drinks it the way you would drink water, because as far as he is concerned that is what drinking is. He likes it. He says so. He asks for more, and he gets it, and he drinks that neat too, and a third. So here is the dose, as carefully as I can put it. He took a wine flagged as needing to be cut 20-fold. He took it undiluted. Against ordinary table practice, that is somewhere between 5 and 20 times the strength of a normal cup, depending on which end of the comparison you stand at. And he did it 3 times in a row, quickly, on a stomach that had just eaten, with no water in between. Then the question everybody actually asks. He is enormous. Should that not protect him? Partly, and less than you think. A bigger body does hold more water, and alcohol spreads through that water, so size genuinely does dilute a given amount. But size does not create tolerance. Tolerance is a thing your liver builds by practice, and practice is exactly what he does not have. The Cyclopes are herdsmen. He tells you himself what he drinks, and it is milk. He is a creature of curds and whey and cheese baskets. He knows vines exist. He has clearly never sat down to a session. So you have an untrained drinker taking undiluted, exceptionally strong wine, 3 servings, fast. That combination puts down people who are much bigger than they look on paper, and it does it much faster than anybody expects, and it does it every weekend in every city on earth. Size is not the shield. Habit is the shield, and he has none. And Homer does not let him go gently, either. He does not get merry and drift off. He goes over backwards with his neck bent, and what comes up out of him comes up the way it comes up out of anyone who has drunk far past their limit, the body deciding, too late, to get rid of what is in it. It is not a dignified scene, and it is not meant to be. The most frightening thing on the island is put on the floor by a drink, and Homer makes sure you watch it happen. And while he is down, they make the thing they are going to use. There is a club in the cave, a green olive trunk the Cyclops had cut to season and dry. Homer says it was about the size of a ship's mast. They cut a length off it, and for men sharpen the end, and then Odysseus takes the point and turns it in the embers until the wood hardens. That last step is the part worth knowing, because it is not decoration. Fire-hardening is real. Drive the moisture out of green wood at the tip, and the fibers tighten and set, and a point that would have crumpled becomes a point that will hold. It is one of the oldest tricks anyone knows, old enough that we find worked wooden points from long before anybody was writing anything down. So the weapon that beats the monster is a farm implement, sharpened by hand and cooked at the tip, used on a body that put itself to sleep. Now the part that changes how you read the whole scene. Odysseus did not find that wine in the cave, he carried it there. And Homer tells you why, in advance, in Odysseus's own voice. He took the skin of wine with him because he had a feeling about the place. He suspected he was about to meet someone of enormous strength, savage, knowing neither justice nor law. So this is not a man improvising with whatever is to hand. He packed it. He walked into that cave already carrying the thing that would win, on a hunch, and then he does something that only makes sense if you know the rules of that world. He asks the Cyclops for a guest gift, the customary present a host owes a stranger. He is standing in a cave, watching this thing eat his crew 2 at a time, and he formally requests the courtesy he is owed. He gets an answer. The Cyclops says his gift will be to eat Odysseus last, after all his companions. That is the joke Homer is telling, and it is very dark. The monster is not refusing the custom. He is performing it, badly, as a parody, accepting the role of host and turning the gift into a promise of murder. And then he drinks unmixed wine like an animal and hands over his own name-shaped opening for the trick that follows. And then there is the famous one, which is better than the version everybody knows. Odysseus tells him his name is nobody, Odysseus. So when the eye is gone and the giant is screaming, the other Cyclopes come to the rock outside and shout in to ask what is wrong, and the grammar of the question they have to ask, in Greek, comes out as "'tis." Surely nobody is hurting you, and he answers with the word, and they hear the word, and they go home. But listen to what they said. "'Tis." Say it out loud, and it is one breath away from metis, cunning, improvisation, the particular kind of adaptive intelligence that is Odysseus's defining quality, the thing he is famous for above strength or courage. The Cyclopes stand outside a cave and unknowingly say the name of the thing that is in there. And Homer closes the loop himself, a few lines later, when Odysseus says out loud that it was his name and his metis together that fooled the monster. Name and mind, one sound apart, in the same sentence. That is not something you can hear in translation. It is a joke told in Greek, to Greeks, and it is the reason the fake name is that fake name and not some other one. Then they get out, and even the getting out is a mechanism. The giant is blind but not stupid. He rolls the stone back and sits in the gap with his hands spread, feeling the back of every animal that goes past, because he knows men are men-shaped and sheep are sheep-shaped. So Odysseus ties the rams together in 3s and puts a man underneath the middle one, and they go out through his fingers with wool on top of them and hands running over the wool. He is checking the only surface he can reach. They travel on the other one. Here is what I think the scene is actually saying, and it is not the thing about being clever. A Greek audience listening to this would have heard a creature announce, over and over, that he had no manners. He keeps no guest properly. He gives a gift that is a threat. He drinks his wine unmixed. Every one of those is a rule broken, and the rules were not decoration. Mixing wine kept you sober enough to stay in charge of yourself, and hospitality kept strangers from being hunted. He does not lose because he is stupid. He loses because he does not have the customs, and the customs were the safety mechanism. Odysseus did not outfight him. He handed him a cup and let him be exactly what he was.